Yep, we're doing goodly. I bloody can't find my camera.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to the Archetypes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. 5 different countries. Who knows how many time zones? Lovely to see you all. Take a look around. See who else is here. I'm expecting at least 2 new faces today.
I'm just going to pop out and pop back in because my camera doesn't go.
Who's that? Leslie. Okay,
yeah.
Sure. Leslie, I've just asked you to start your video, see if that helps.
I tried that. That didn't work.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yes.
So Leslie will join us when she is ready.
Yeah.
So take a look around. Take a right finger, point to somebody and say, good day.
Good day.
Let's do this Australian one. Good day, mate.
Good day, mate.
There we go. Who's got another language?
Goeiedag, ou maat. Afrikaans.
Everybody, goeiedag, ou maat. Very good. Good idea to you. Let's put some culture into the call by adding a bit of South African Afrikaans. So we know that a few more people are going to join us. We have a full agenda today, as always. And the first thing we're going to do is you're going to be split into groups. We're going to go very quickly through the flip charts from last time. Then you'll have a few minutes to revise the work from last week. And also some of you have posted some very interesting questions in the Facebook group and have had some interesting insights. So you'll have a few minutes to talk about those. Then we're going to come back to the main room and cover some of the finer distinctions. And then after that is playtime. We're going to take a look at the lover archetype today. And in addition to me sharing and teaching what might be useful, you'll also get time to practice, because ultimately it's when you practice that you will leave this call confident enough to use it in your very next client session is, of course, what I suggest. Successful people implement quickly. So if you want to make this course something really worthwhile, then it's a case of getting out there and practicing it. Ellie, the only thing I can think of is that you might have muted on your computer, your sound. Everybody else can hear me okay? Nod your head?
Yep.
Must be, unless you were telepathic when I asked you to do all the other things. Eddie, the only other suggestion I might have is see if other sound works. In other words, see if when you play a music file or some other file, if it actually plays. And if it doesn't, then it might be, well, then I don't really know how to help you without having access to your keyboard. Eddie's just dropped off, so she'll probably join us. Okay, so let's go through the flip charts from last time. Those of you here for the first time, you're going to get in a minute, you're going to get the opportunity to revise anyway. So, and hopefully you've listened to the recording. All right, we're going to have to do the best way we can with the flip chart the way it is. So we started last week talking about the way of the archetype. And then when we discussed what archetypes were, these are the things you came up with. That it's an energy construct, aspect of self. It changes instantly, right? We go from archetype to archetype in a nanosecond. It's not something that's fixed. It lives inside of us. I want to come back when we're done with this and just revise this a little bit inside of us. It's internal construction that we have the choice to either nurture or enliven or not to. So we have the choice in terms of which archetypes we want to access. It's like a blueprint that we can step into or not step into. In other words, we do have a choice about that. Some are okay and some aren't. I can't quite remember what we discussed when that was up. Does anybody remember? What did we talk about when it said some are okay and some aren't?
No, it went so fast, I can't remember.
Okay.
I wonder whether some are okay in some situations and some aren't.
Yeah, so I'm cautious about this one, and we want to avoid the idea that some archetypes aren't okay, because that is what leads to us suppressing parts of ourselves, and that's the part that leads to disaster. So I'm not quite sure what we said there. You might just want to have another listen to the recording. Aspects are they all have characteristics, and we've got them all. So what I want to revise here very briefly is, it's a bit like, it's not for me so much that we are certain archetypes, is that we step into certain archetypes, usually seamlessly, effortlessly, and unconsciously. So it's a bit like saying, if somebody has a favorite dress, she often wears the red dress. Nobody's going to say she is a red dress. They're all going to say she wears that red dress, or somebody that prefers to wear a green shirt. They're going to say he wears the green shirt. It might be his favorite shirt, might be her favorite dress, but it's not who they are, right? They can wear an orange shirt tomorrow and a blue dress if they really wanted to. So for me, the archetypes is not something that we have. It says there in your manual, mistake 101 is to start referring to people as, oh, they are. Oh, they are an inflated lover. Oh, they are a deflated magician. Instead, see if you can view it like it is a particular energy that they have embodied at that particular point in time, and they can and do change. Nobody is an inflated warrior 24/7. You will also see the other archetypes being displayed. So then the next bit we did last time was around when clients don't shift, all the challenges that bring us as practitioners. We might feel overwhelmed, lost, and hopeless, never-ending sessions. So they just come back week after week after week and nothing seems to change. Self-doubt creeps in. We think it's us or the technique. Frustration sets in either with it, the fact that it is not shifting, frustration with a client, or frustration with ourselves. We end up thinking we're not good enough. Confusion sets in, no change happens. It feels like we are letting the client down. Overwhelm sets in, we feel inadequate, and our expectations aren't met, and neither are those of the client. So with difficult clients, a whole bunch of reasons to have a particular tool to actually help them step by step, which was the next bit that we did, was around the benefits of a framework, that it helps you prepare, brings more awareness, it brings you back to the here and now, it pretty much provides a safety net, it empowers you, raises your confidence, and so on. And then the last thing we had on the flip chart was that Cliff's idea, which I really like, and it also says it in the manual, good luck with getting rid of a particular type or reining it back in. It reminds me of childhood saying, you know, don't be so full of yourself, which is also where 99% of the world's problems start. So if a particular archetype is very high and the others were fairly low, then we might want to say, well, just bring your lover down. You know, if you could just bring your lover, if you could just rein the lover in a bit, Susan, you're too loverish. Jeepers, can we just bring the lover down a little bit? Good luck with alienating your clients. Let me know how your client practice works when you do that. And then what Cliff says instead, let's bring the other archetypes up so that you have a higher balance as opposed to making any of these wrong. So what you're going to have is, let's make it 6 minutes. I will ask Zoom to put you into rooms. If you're in the same group as last time, you can read it as a sign, or you can just think it's just one of those things. It's just the way that Zoom actually allocates the rooms. There's nothing personal about it. Let's see. Okay, some of you will be 2 in a room, some of you will be 3. So the idea is, Ellie, is your sound okay? I see your lips move, so I imagine so. Okay, good. All right, let's see what happens here. By the way, if you're not using Zoom yet, when you do stuff like this, you're really missing out. Zoom is just the bee's knees. All right, please stay in your room. If you are complete, find something else to talk about, like, I don't know, vegan brownie recipes or the weather, or maybe even archetypes.
Benny, could we just check what it is we're going to talk about?
You're going to revise the work we did last time.
Okay.
And any insights you had in the week, some of you posted them on the Facebook group. Any insights you've had in the last week, those of you here for the first time, hopefully you have watched or listened to the recordings. But if not, then this is an opportunity also for you to catch up. So if you are in a room with somebody who wasn't here last time, give you an opportunity to get them with the program. Your last task in the group is to uncover what the bishop did actually say to the actress and what archetype he therefore was in when he said that. So it's revision, bishop, actress, archetype, and please stay in your rooms. I'll bring you back here in 6 minutes. So it's going to go quick. Let's do that. Okay, so you should have the invitation on your screen. See you in about 6 minutes. Welcome back. Jane, what? What? Do tell.
Oh my God, that was hilarious. We were talking and we just weren't together for long enough. We were going, yeah, it just cut out.
What cut out?
Well, we
We ran out of time. We ran out of
Jane and I
time.
don't shut up, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So we need to pair up again next time.
Well, by the sounds of it, I should keep you apart. Like the kids move you to the front bench.
No,
So
it's
what
great.
came up? What came up? What did the bishop say to the actress? Let me hear.
We never figured that out.
Was it something to do with that?
All right.
We're only guessing. We're only guessing.
I am going to mute all of you so that you can speak one at a time. Where am I?
I'll mute myself.
Mute all. Okay, good. So I'm going to mute all of you. So unmute yourself. Tell me what the bishop said to the actress.
No idea. We figured that there was that going on. Probably
And that would be what archetype, Leslie?
the warrior.
Okay, good. Inflated warrior, right? Yeah.
Inflated warrior. Because
Yeah.
we were talking about narcissists.
Whole nother archetype on its own. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Anybody else? You skipped that part of the exercise, or you tongue-tied? All right, then make it up now.
Gosh, everyone's quiet.
Yeah, I've got time. I've got 2 hours. We can wait for a while in silence.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Benny.
Do you know the saying, what the bishop said to the actress?
No.
Oh, okay, good. So if you were to make up a bishop having a conversation with an actress, what might he say to her?
He might be an inflated lover
Ah,
and say, oh, how delicious you actually are, and you are so wonderful, and I would love to ... Maybe.
naughty bishop. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Benny, sorry, my camera is not working. I would say the actress would say, why is the bishop always talking about sex? And why is the actress always talking about God?
Interesting to you, where your mind goes. All right, good. So thank you for that. We're going to do a few distinctions, and then we're going to move on to the lover. So page 5. Page 5. It says shadow work at the top. Again, if you haven't been, I do suggest you go visit Cliff's website. There's some very lovely diagrams that expand on the stuff that we cover here. So at the top, Cliff only chooses 4 archetypes, right? We said last time, or if you didn't say it then, I'll say it now, there are an infinite number of archetypes. We just cover 4 in this particular shadow work model. And what I'm finding is most behaviors and most people in their current state, we can kind of fit into one of these 4. Sometimes it's easier than others, like the narcissist. That's an archetype on its own. Depending on the narcissist's behavior, we might say that he or she is exhibiting inflated lover or deflated magician or whatever it might be. So the second paragraph, it's not an exact science, right? We are infinitely more interesting than models. So even in this manual and even in the things that's going to come out of my mouth and probably has come out already, there will be apparent contradictions. There will be overlaps. We're not an exact science. So rather take this as a guide. You know, don't, it says there somewhere in the manual, don't confuse the map with the territory. We are looking at a map of archetypes. The territory are real people with real lives, much more interesting than the stuff we do here. Ways of expression rather than who you are. We spoke about that in the check-in, the third paragraph on page 5. So it's energies that we move in and out of, as I said, at a nanosecond's notice. It's not who we are. We exhibit a particular archetype in a particular moment, or we step into it. And when we step into the archetype of the bully, guess what? Then we have access to all the qualities and attributes and traits to be a bully. When we step into the archetype of the lover, then suddenly we have all the qualities, attributes, thoughts, and feelings that's associated with a lover. Those of you on the call last week saw that when you stepped into the archetype of the sovereign, the king or the queen, suddenly you had different thoughts, you had different feelings. When you stepped into the archetype of the prince, it was a different story altogether. Any questions on this part? Kind of self-explanatory? Okay, good. Page 7.
Hi, Benny.
Yes,
Benny,
go ahead.
I just want to pick up something that you said then.
Yes.
So last week, when everybody stepped into those various different archetypes, some of us would have experienced different attributes.
Yes.
Especially for the young prince.
Yes.
Which is not such a kind of common theme.
Yes.
And so how then do you play with those things where the energy and the thought that we have of the queen and even of a king are different?
Yes. Just like in real life, we get sovereigns that are different, or princes that are all different. So depending on how it showed up for you in the exercise, we might get a sense of whether your, let's say, the prince archetype or the princess archetype is inflated or deflated. Does that make sense? Good. There also, I mean, John also raises another point. You know, there are an infinite number of ways to be a king or a queen. And depending on the day of the week, it'll be different for us. What's good about or easy about this model, even though in the beginning, as I said last week, it's like learning a new language. It's a whole new way of looking at people's behavior. It might be or seem complex in the beginning, but once you actually get it, you'll be able to, oh, that sounds like a magician. That sounds like a lover. That sounds like an inflated warrior, whatever the case might be. So on page 7, somebody please read the first 2 or the first 3 paragraphs. Let's just read the whole thing. The paragraph under different strokes, different strengths on page 7.
Okay, I'll read it since
Thank
nobody
you,
else is.
Leslie.
In his shadow work model, Cliff Barry focuses on page 7. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Page 7.
Right.
Oh, yeah. None of us have reached our full potential, not by a million galaxies. A magician can work things out, not so hot when it comes to making love. It's great for you when you need to do accounting or work out the bag of oranges in the store is cheaper than the loose ones. Tell the lover to put a stop to the way people abuse them, and they squirm and smile and shake it off as nothing. Drawing boundaries is not what it's good at. That's what the warrior is for. A hammer is good for hammering something and not so good for washing glasses. A soft cloth is great for washing glasses, but not so good in getting nails into the wall.
Does that make sense? Best tool for the job. So
Yeah.
in your own experimenting, thanks for the read, Leslie. In your own experimenting with yourself in the next week, consider this question. What would A, fill in the word, do right now? In other words, if you have a challenge with a child, ask yourself, what would a balanced mother do right now? If you have to make a difficult decision at the office, what would a great manager do right now? If you have a challenge with a sibling, what would a good sister do right now? And just see what happens when you stay with a question. Don't necessarily expect epiphanies and voices out the sky, although if they do happen, do post them on the group so we can all rejoice. But typically, it's much more subtle than that. The answer will often just come, and as you saw last week, when you embody that even with that question, sometimes you start accessing information and qualities and attributes that you did not access from the place that you were in. And then the second paragraph, a bit of this, a bit of that, is just a model, right? We spoke about that. we are much more interesting than just these models. So just use it as a map. Sometimes the map fits, sometimes the map doesn't fit. Also avoiding the thing of, as I said before, saying somebody is a particular archetype. Rather view it as a particular energy that they are in the moment, knowing they can step out of it at a moment's notice. So we're moving into the different terminology that we use, or that I use in the manual. First one, bottom of page 7, inflated, deflated, or balanced. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Inflated is when that particular archetypal energy is very high, or I've stepped into it very strongly. And typically, not always, if I'm thinking in terms of, let's say, the heavily inflated warrior, that'll probably be a limbic brain activity, right? Something happens, somebody snaps, and they just step full on into the inflated warrior. Inflated warrior would be aggressive, loud, might even punch somebody in the face or abuse them verbally, throw things around. So very inflated warrior. On the other side of the scale, the deflated warrior would be the one that finds it hard to actually access that energy. So as we said, we need the right archetype for the right job. If you are going into a tough negotiation, you're going to have a strong enough warrior. Otherwise, you're going to be bullied, you're going to be trampled on, you're going to leave it feeling even more deflated than you felt when you went in. Inflated warrior is when it's hard for you to access those energies. So you might be unable to draw boundaries, for example. You might find it very hard to say no, for example. You might find it hard to get up off your bum and make that cold call, arrange that meeting, or go on that date. Those would be signs of deflated warrior. And then, of course, the balanced one is the ideal one, where you have access to the balanced, mature is maybe another word for balanced, mature archetype. Any comments or questions on that? Good. Then we'll move on to page 8, which is the last bit of theory for today. When we go through the 4 archetypes in this manual, there are the same phrases that I use again and again, or the same framework. And they are the ways of connecting, the wound or gateway emotion, the healing energy, and supporting, encouraging, and nurturing. Now, the way of connecting of a particular archetype is how this archetype knows that they are alive is by, for example, the lover knows that it's alive by feeling. That's what the lover does. It feels. That's how it connects with the world around them. The magician connects through thinking. When it thinks, it feels alive and connecting with people through conversation and debate and constructs and theory and models and talking intellectual conversations. So each of these archetypes, we're going to go through their main way of connecting. Now, the second one is sometimes confusing the wound, access, or gateway emotion. So, for example, for the lover, that emotion is grief or sorrow. It does not mean that the lover is permanently in grief or sorrow. It means that the only way a person will ever be a balanced lover is by having done their grief and sorrow work. So it's like the gateway in. In other words, if you have a client that is heavily inflated in the lover, we're going to go through all the details what that means. They are addicted, they're gushing emotion, they cry at a moment's notice, or the deflated lover, which is stoic, cold, kind of not feely, not touchy-feely, not connecting in that way. We can safely assume, until proven otherwise, that they have grief work to do, because once they've done the grief work, they'll be able to access the mature or the balanced lover archetype. Now, each of these 4 archetypes have their own wound or gateway emotion. The next one, healing energy. That's the energy required by you as a practitioner to exhibit, and also the energy that the client would need to step into in order to heal this. And that's why the manual has a section at the back which tells you or gives suggestions as to which homework to give clients to help them access the healing energy. And then the last one is how you and your client can best support, encourage, and nurture a particular archetype. This will become more apparent when we actually go into the archetypes themselves. All right, I'm going to put you into different groups. You have 5 minutes to discuss what we just discussed.
Can I ask a question quickly?
Please do. Yeah.
Did I hear you say that for the inflated or the deflated lover, they both need to do grief work?
Yes. When an archetype is in a non-mature state or non-balanced state, we suggest in this model that they have to do work around the gateway emotion. And in terms of the lover, it happens to be grief.
Thank you.
Your question, Jane?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, good. So you've got 5 minutes. The invitation is on your screen. Discuss what we just talked through as a way of revising, and then you'll be brought back here automatically. All right, welcome back. What happened in your discussions? Unmute yourself, let's share.
Okay. So having sort of missed last week and haven't caught up yet, it was interesting to know, because if someone was an inflated, say, a lover, the assumption is that's a good thing. So it was good to know that if someone's particularly inflated or particularly deflated, that means that there's work to do in that space. So that was good to hear that. And we also discussed a couple of client things. Ellie had a client that she thought this would be quite useful for, but she can probably tell you that bit.
Okay.
And as did Shirley, so that was all good. And Benny, can I just ask one favour, because I can't find the print off I did for the workbook. Could you quickly email me the copy on the PFK 29 email address?
Okay, can I do that right after the call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll tell you what, I'll do it the next time you go into a breakout room.
Okay, great. That would be good.
Which is going to be fairly soon. Anybody else? What did you discuss?
Well, we were talking about expressing a some sort of like nervousness about how are we going to like grab hold of this very fluid set of archetypes, but then also feeling quite reassured that at least it's these concepts and what we're learning here gives you a good framework, structure to think when you are stuck. It's a good way to help you pick a way forward and choose a moment. And one imagines one will get better at.
Absolutely. I say,
picking a good experience.
It takes years to learn a new language. It does.
Yeah.
When you were a child, it took you years to learn to speak. Start learning a foreign language, unless you're exceptionally gifted in languages, it's probably going to take you a few years before you're good at it. It's the same thing here. That's why I encourage you to pick one thing and implement it in your next client session, right? That's the way to go about this stuff. Implement one thing next session so that you can nail it. Thanks for that, Caro. Anybody else? What came up in your private session?
Benny, I found it interesting that both the deflated archetype and the inflated would be in the limbic brain. Like the inflated might be more obvious because someone might be loud or overexpressive, but the deflated might be more withdrawn, and that would, they're still in the limbic brain scenario, aren't they?
They are. I mean, we could argue that I don't know if it's 99.9 or 100% of how we are in the world is limbic brain orientated, right? No decisions are made in the frontal cortex. It's all made in the limbic brain. So we could argue that if somebody is activated limbic brain-wise into a fight mode, they might become inflated warrior and fight. So we might also argue if somebody goes into freeze mode in the limbic brain, that their way of dealing with that freeze is to go to deflated lover or deflated magician or deflated warrior. So I would say that everything's limbic brain. The reason I mentioned the limbic brain is I really would like to plant the seed that these changes happen nanosecond by nanosecond, and they are 99% of the time, we don't control it. Hence this model and this course to help you step into these more consciously. We step into these unconsciously all the time, in and out, inflated, deflated, balanced, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. In the demo session I'm going to do, you'll see how that happens. We'll debrief it afterwards and you'll see how quickly we go from archetype to archetype. So the invitation with this stuff is to step into it more consciously, because when you do, you access energies and attributes and thoughts and feelings and qualities that you would not normally have access to, exactly as most of you saw last week on the call. Step into the sovereign, suddenly you feel like a king or a queen. So yes, all limbic brain related. Elizabeth, did you have something?
We were a little bit confused, and it's what you say. You know, if you learn a new language in the beginning, you have no idea where you're going with everything. But
yes,
I can, for myself, I can slowly see some little light and going, yeah, okay.
Cool.
Takes time.
Cool. So confusion is pretty much spot on for now. That's one of the reasons why I get you in the breakout room so often, to talk things through, to help dots connect. And also, we're only not even halfway through call 2, right? We still got another 2 calls to do, demos to do, practice and so on. But thanks for letting me know where you are. Is there somebody else that's burning to say something? Going. Avenol, do you want to say something? Just unmute yourself, bottom left. Avenol, unmute yourself, bottom left. Let me do it for you. All right, Avenol, go ahead.
Benny, I can't see anybody and everything's gone off the screen and I'm not quite sure how to get back.
Neither am I. So you're in the archetype of Darth Vader right now, in the darkness.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes. It's hard to say without seeing your screen, Avenol, so I'm not really sure how to help you. Does anybody else have any suggestions what Avenol
Yeah,
might
I think
try?
if you disconnect, you switch off and come back in again, it might help.
Oh, okay.
You want to try that, Avenol?
If Avenol can see a little video camera at the very bottom, video camera icon, if she clicks that, she'll come back to...
We can see her, so her video works fine. Is that she can't see anybody else?
Yeah, no, the same thing happened to me, and I found if I clicked the little blue thing, I was back.
Okay.
Okay, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yay.
Just when you all thought I knew everything, eh? Okay, good. So page 18, we're going to move to next. Oh, Avenol, did you want to say something, or was it just a cry for technical help?
It was a cry for technical help.
All right.
But
cool.
there is just one thing I'd like to say is that dear Mitch shared with us, you know, when feelings have been blocked or grief has been so blocked over the years, so the lover is very deflated, and you know how to re-access all the blocked grief and
So we have a whole section on that, on exactly what to do. And of course, when emotions when grief, for example, has been blocked for so long, people can also step into inflated lover. In other words, if I haven't grieved a particular event, and the next event comes along that I don't grieve, and the next event comes along that I don't grieve, and the next event comes along that I don't grieve, I have such a lot of built up grief, I'll cry when somebody just looks at me in a nice way. So when we have blocked a particular gateway emotion, we can go either inflated or deflated. And then just again, a reminder, none of these are good or bad. It's just the question is it useful? Is it useful for me to cry at the drop of a hat? Is it useful for me to be angry as so much? Is it useful for me to be meek and mild and never defend my boundaries and never be able to say no and then resent it afterwards? And if the answer is no, then the manual provides a framework of how to identify that first of all, and then what to do about it secondly. Which leads us nicely into page 18. Fiona, you can guess what's on page 18. Use your imagination. So we're talking about, we can call it best practice. talking about there are two things for us to consider when we want to help people using this model. And the one is things for us to consider, so practitioner. And the other one is around the client. As practitioner, we have two things to consider. First one is what. The next one is how. So here's what that's about. The what is, what tool am I going to use to help this client move through this particular block that we have identified? Will I, for example, be using body work today? Will I use the tool of gently challenging the client in a kind and loving way? Will I suggest some body work for them when they go home? Will I use the technique of interrupting them every time they start crying today? What tool, and there are loads of them in your handout, which tool am I going to use? The how bit is how am I going to interact with this client? Jean Booth thought it was ridiculous until she did it herself and saw that it worked. I said to a client one day, I said, listen, it's time for you to pee or get off the pot. And she peed and then got off the pot, whatever that means. She was able to move to the next step, right? She got it. We were just playing games. It was just wasting time. She wasn't going where she needed to go. So that was my energy. I decided to say it in quite a strong warrior type way. Now, I could get away with it because we'd already built rapport and she already saw my kind side and my facilitator side, and we had built rapport and there was trust and safety and all the stuff that you need before you can say that. So that's the second question. How am I going to be? Am I going to be in my lover mainly, or am I going to step into my sovereign today to really truly bless and see this person as a human being who's suffering, or how am I going to be in relation to them? In other words, which archetype am I going to step into to facilitate, to make easy the change for them? And then I say there in the box on page 18, how you facilitate your client is at least as important as which tool you choose to use. So if I were to use a tool, but use it if I'm unskillful in choosing my how, then the what won't work so well. One of my mentors always used to say, because I can be very sharp in group situations, it should be quiet and nobody should muck around and everything should just be perfect. He said to me, Benny, with you, it's never what you say, it's always how you say it. You can be so sharp, and where's your compassion? So I used to be involved with an organization called the Mankind Project, and one of the founders, Rich Tosi, has said that telling somebody the truth without compassion can be one of the cruelest things you do, right? So telling somebody the truth is great, but how do I do that? Do I do that harshly? Do I do that in an insulting way or an attacking way? Or do I do it with love, kindness, and compassion? So those are the two aspects, and I believe that one is at least as important as the other. And then client aspects. There are two aspects for us to consider when it comes to our clients and how they fit into this model. And the one aspect for us to consider is personal, and the other one is interpersonal. And this is what that's about. The personal one is, how are they experiencing this therapy right now? Or you've taken them back to when they were 4 years old, first day at crash, and they're crying their eyes out. Or you have regressed them to the time their mother died. Or something has come up and they're really frustrated because of a fight they just had with their partner just before the session with you, right? So that's the personal stuff. What is their personal experience in this moment? The interpersonal angle is, how are they relating to you right now? Are they angry because you just challenged them? Do they feel kindness and compassion because you're so sweet with them today? What is the relationship between the two of you, and how are they experiencing you as the practitioner for today? Do they feel safe with you? Are they angry? Are they upset? Do they feel unsafe? Do they feel challenged? Do they feel charged? How do they feel in relation to you? Now, in terms of the what, bottom of page 18, if we go here to the what, which tool will I use? My client is presenting today. She doesn't stop crying. I just look at her and she cries. She cannot stop crying. She's been crying for 7 days, and there's just no stop to this thing. Which tool am I going to use that might be most useful to facilitate her through the grief as opposed to being stuck in the grief? And how am I going to do that? So in terms of the what, bottom of page 18, you decide which process might be the most effective for whatever your client's presenting with. So you identify, because you've done this course, identify where you believe they are most wounded in this particular time, or what the gateway emotion is for this particular archetype to help it become more mature or more balanced. And then you follow the further pages in the manual. Once you've identified the archetype where you believe it is most wounded and the help is most needed for now, then you pick one of the tools that's on the list. There's a whole list of tools at the back of your manuals, which we will go through in more detail. Any comments, questions on the what, on the concept of the what and the how? Okay.
Benny, can you ever get that wrong in the moment? Like, can you be so in the moment that you can misread it?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So also know that just as your client and people out there move from archetype to archetype in a nanosecond without thinking about it, we do the same. So I can sometimes judge, because remember, that's all we have. We can only go in our judgment, and that judgment has a bad name. But maybe another way for judgment is discernment. I have to do this is what the client pays me for. The client pays me to judge which archetype they are most wounded in, and to judge which tool I think is most appropriate, and to judge how I think if I were to be a certain way, it would most help them. So those are all judgments. It's all we have. We have to make them in a nanosecond. So often we might mismatch the client. We think they're wounded lover, but actually they're inflated magician. And we use a tool that's not most conducive for the job. That's life. And so when we notice, what do you think might happen? Anybody? What do you think might happen if we use, I don't want to call it wrong because it won't be wrong, but if I don't use the best tool for the job at hand, if I mismatch, if I misread a client and I apply a warrior tool to a magician wound, what do you think will happen? How would we know that we might have misread the situation?
You're not going to get the response you're expecting from the client.
For definite, you're not going to get a response that you're expecting. Anybody else?
Might get resistance.
That's it. You get some sort of resistance. They'll either look at you like, what the hell? Or they might actually get angry, or they might shut down, or they might explode. They might just disappear quietly into the background. So when we notice that a disconnect has happened, we've broken rapport because we misread the situation, we just rebuild it again. Then we meet them in this archetype. So, for example, if because I misread the situation, they've become deflated magician. They've suddenly gone all confused and they don't really know what they want anymore. And they don't know, I don't know, there's too many thoughts. It's all confused. Then I go, okay, they've just stepped into that archetype. So what is the most conducive tool for that archetype? So we just keep adapting. I was thinking again of the dance analogy that we used last time. The way that I see this is we might, if you're a dance instructor and you have a client that you are teaching how to dance, or you're just dancing together, they get to change the music whenever they want. And they change it all the time. And as they change the music, you need to adapt your pace. They change the music, you need to adapt your pace all the time. And sometimes we get it wrong. That's just life. So top of page 19. When a client reacts to you, in other words, they become snappy or shirty or angry or something like that, then you identify, as I just said, then you identify which archetype you think they're coming from now, and you use the tool then for that particular archetype. So you step into the most appropriate archetype for yourself: balanced, sovereign, lover, magician, or warrior. If your client is deflated sovereign, okay, so let's talk about this briefly. We haven't done the sovereign yet, but you can imagine for yourself, the sovereign is the part that has self-worth, has a good self-image, has direction in life, knows where they're going, has the ability to bless themselves and other people. So that's that part of us. If a client has gone into deflated sovereign, in other words, they feel very unworthy, very unsure of themselves, very critical probably of themselves, and they come late for a session, why would now not be a good time to make a point of the fact that they came late for the session? Why might you, in this instance, leave it for later? Anybody?
That person is likely to feel very guilty about coming late anyway.
They already feel guilty for coming late, very likely. Anybody else?
They need blessing. They need validation. They need to be seen.
Yes. So when they already arrive deflated sovereign, and we add to that, it's almost like adding insult to injury. It's going to be very hard for them to come back from that. Once we have met them where they are, which is deflated sovereign, and we have helped rebuild that somewhat, I do believe it is important that we speak about clients coming late, and we use the warrior archetype for that when it's time. So once we've built connection, once we've helped them to build their sovereign, then they are more receptive to actually hearing the bit. You know what, Susan? I'd like us to talk today also about you coming late for sessions, right? Now we can start that conversation, not at the, so we pick our times, we pick our battles for the most appropriate time. Bottom of page 19, useful strategies. So you meet them where they're at and you use their strengths. So one of the things I really used to get my back up in some process work that I used to be part of, when somebody was in their head, they had a lot of thoughts, so they're a high magician, then unskilled facilitators would say, oh, just get out of your head, just go into your heart, which is a complete mismatch. It's making the person wrong. It's telling them that the way they are showing up in this process isn't the right way and they should be different. If they knew how to be different, they would be different, right? So meet them where they are. If somebody is an inflated magician, you meet them where they're at, and then you lead them somewhere more useful. So use the strengths that show up in your client sessions. This is not about you judging their way is wrong. I don't think we get resistant clients. I think we get unskillful practitioners. Happens to all of us, so I can put myself in that same category. It's just that we haven't read the situation. I don't like the word correctly. We haven't read the situation accurately, and it's time for us to change tact. And then you help them access or release a transformative emotion. Remember, one of the terminology bits that we spoke of is transformative emotion. In other words, which emotion or emotions that if they were to access that would help the healing the most. You help them access that emotion and the healing can start happening. All right, so I'm going to put you into different breakout rooms while I send Fiona a manual. You have about 5 minutes. I'm going to recreate the rooms. You have about 5 minutes to just talk about what we just covered in the last 10, 15 minutes or so.
Okay, I just sent Fiona a manual a few minutes ago. Sorry, Benny.
No,
I just didn't want to disturb you.
I just didn't even think of that option. Thanks for taking care of that.
No problem.
All right, so the rooms are open. Please accept the invitation. You got 5 minutes, discuss, and then we'll come back here. All right, so what came out of your groups?
Okay, I'll go.
Thank you.
Just thinking about how we could use it, well, obviously, particularly we're mostly EFT and matrix-based practitioners, and just thinking about how you could utilize it there. And I do have one client that comes to mind that often when we're in the matrix and say we're back with the 8-year-old, the 40-year-old comes back in and says, nah, that doesn't make sense. That's not going to that's not real, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, no, we go back to the 8-year-old. Forget the 40-year-old. Of course it doesn't make sense to the 40-year-old. So considering that gateway and how you can sort of perhaps better control the session for a better outcome.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. If you have a client in whatever modality, and the client says to you that it doesn't make sense. This thing, no, this thing that you want to do now, it doesn't make any sense. What archetype are they in when they have that resistance or that conversation with you, that objection?
Is that not
Would that be magician?
That's it, right? Magician. And it doesn't have to be inflated. It could be an inflated magician. It could just be the magician that reckons, hold on a second, this is rubbish. I don't want to do that. Now, if we can meet them with our magician, then we have a better chance of resolving the conflict. If we want to force them through the warrior, or we want to plead with them through the lover, it's unlikely it's going to give us a good result, right? We got to, and so this is what most of us might want to do. We might want to make them wrong for resisting, because that's not the program. You know, the manual says page 7, they say yes. No, they suddenly say no. And then we want to make the client wrong, as opposed to just seeing something happen. They got triggered. They've slipped into another archetype. We meet them in that archetype, and then we lead them back to where we think would be most useful. Thanks for that, Fiona. Anybody else? What came up from your discussion?
I just wanted to ask you a question about this, and Rose, the previous lady said something that also resonated with me, that if, you know, quite often somebody has, they've gone back to their younger self.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of age differential is sort of easier to think about somebody going back to being a younger person. But how does it affect which archetypes they'll be slipping into and out of? Does it mean they will always be heading towards a deflated place, or
no, not at all. So it's a great question. No. Remember that what we want to do in every given opportunity is to assess or judge or discern where we think the client is most wounded in this particular time. Once we've identified, it seems like an inflated lover, then we go through our list of tools and we go through our list of how we should be. And then we combine the what and the how, the tool and our attitude or our energy, and we suggest a particular route for the client. The regression happens to be one of the tools we can use when the work that needs doing is lover work. In other words, when really we judge, discern, think, have an opinion that the client needs to do grieving work because they're stuck in the lover, we might use regression. When a client regresses, in other words, regression, I just mean go back to a younger child. Go back. So if I were age 49 and I were to go back to yesterday or to when I was 7, that's called regression. We're not necessarily talking about past life regressions, although they can happen too. When we regress a client, we're not saying that there will be any particular archetype. They might become very angry when they see how the teacher molested their younger self, right? They might start crying their eyes out as the little one, as they start associating with a little 7-year-old that was so scared and afraid of how daddy used to beat her. So any archetype can show up, and then it's like the same process over and over again. As soon as a client changes archetype, it's like remember the dance analogy? They change the music, we follow suit. Oh, that's interesting. A minute ago they were bawling their eyes out. Now they're ready to punch somebody in the face. Okay, good. Inflated warrior. Let's meet them where they're at. The next minute they start into this whole debate thing about the rights and the wrongs of life and justice and morals and ethics. We go, interesting. They just jumped into magician. Let me meet them in the magician, right? They change the music, we follow suit.
Yeah.
It will become clearer, I promise, as we go along. Time for one more. Anybody else? What happens in your group? Benny,
yes. I'm just curious about using their strengths. So we talked about people are usually deflated or inflated when they come for a session because they're out of balance. So Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, and again, I would hesitate to say they are inflated or deflated. I'd rather say in this particular moment they seem to be showing up, or based on the symptoms they are telling us about. You know, every time my partner and I have an argument, I lash out and get angry. I might say that they step into a particular archetype more often than is useful for them, and it's inflated or deflated, and then that's where we need to do the work.
And so the word of strength, use their strengths. How, I mean, that's probably part of the how, but.
So here's what I mean by that. If somebody is a very smart magician, they're an intellectual person, they love models and theories and talking about things, they prefer talking about the feelings rather than feeling their feelings. So they come to therapy or to our practice ready to talk about stuff. And we judge, well, the thing is, talking about your grief is not really going to help. I judge, discern, have an opinion that you are stuck in the lover. We wouldn't have this conversation out loud. I'm just telling you what I might be thinking. So I think that you're stuck in the lover quarter. That's where your healing needs to happen. You need to grieve your childhood that you never had. I have two options now. How I can say to the client, well, the thing is, John, that we can't really do any grief work while we just talk about it. So you're going to have to find a way to start crying. Okay, that's not a particularly smart way to meet a client, right? I'm not relying on his strength isn't feeling his emotions. His strength is talking about his emotions. So I need to meet him there as opposed to wanting him to be strong in the lover, which he isn't. That's my job to help him do that. Does that make sense, Sue?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Yeah.
Okay,
perfect.
You. All right, everybody take a nice deep breath in and out, stretch the body, stand up if you want, stretch the legs, have a cup of something if you have some. And then point to somebody else in the screen and say, fascinating stuff.
Fascinating stuff.
Very good. So we're going to turn to page 11. Don't you just love it when we don't follow the manual? We're rebellious today. Those of you with OCD might want to start tapping. All right, page 11. We're going to talk about the lover. And we're going to do a quick demo, and then you're going to get to play. The lover is about connection and feeling and expression and the body and inner child stuff. Remember, again, it's not an exact science, but those are the clues for us around the lover. The lover's way of expressing itself, the way that the lover knows it's alive and when it feels most alive is when it's feeling stuff. So people with intense lovers feel life intensely. Or we could say when they feel life intensely, they're accessing the lover. That's how we know. The lover wound, or the gateway emotion, in other words, the work that needs doing to become more balanced in the lover, is grief work, loss. Doing your grief work around what you lost or lost out on enables your access to balanced lover energy. Now, I'm adding a number of things here, so you might want to write them down on page 11, towards the end where it says healing the lover. It already says love, kindness, and compassion. I'm adding to that reassurance, the body, regression work, grieving, and soothing like a small child. So reassurance, the body, regression work, grieving, soothing like a small child. Those are the bits that we can use to help the lover heal so that people can become more balanced in that particular archetype. Now, the balanced lover at the bottom of page 11, that's the bit that just loves life, is tactile, loves nature, loves animals, loves sunsets and beaches and chocolate and wine and fires and sunsets and sunrises and cuddles for hours and holding hands in the park, and just loves it, loves kids, can't walk past a baby without smiling and gurgling and doing stuff, and it's just yummy, and it's always excited about stuff. It's like, yes, just totally in touch with feeling. You can say that is a balanced lover. So really laughs when they are happy, cries when they are sad. They're not always happy people. They are feeling people when they feel the true emotion in the moment. The deflated lover on page 12, stoic, right? No feelings. That's why they're deflated. It's hard for them to access their emotions. And if they were punished as a child for expressing emotions, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, why wouldn't they become stoic adults? They learn pretty young, pretty early on, that it's not safe for them to express their emotions. So then that's their way of going through life, by not feeling even. It's not that they're feeling it and they are lying about it. They don't actually access their feelings because it wasn't safe when they were younger. Unable to really connect with feeling. They would much rather talk about things than feel them. So, for example, if they might be the awkward person at a funeral or at a wedding when it comes to either... forget the right word, to express empathy to the remaining siblings when the brother died, or at a wedding, they're kind of a little bit awkward in connecting through feeling, be that so-called positive or negative feeling. Not connected to their bodies often, right? So they probably not dancers, they probably don't do massages or body work, they're not in touch with how they feel. If you ask them how they feel, they might respond with, well, I think. So there might be more a magician answer as opposed to an actual lover answer. They can be awkward huggers, right? This whole touchy-feely thing is just like, what the hell? Like, They might avoid physical contact. So they might prefer not to hug or hold hands or stuff like that. They might isolate rather than engage and connect, right? The connection through feeling thing is hard for them, so they avoid it. Uncomfortable, as I said, in the presence of others' emotions and desperately wanting others to feel better. I have no idea why I put that there. So just scratch that out for now until I remember why I put that there. Does anybody have any ideas why you think I might have put that there? Desperate, wanting others to feel better. I don't think it belongs there. Scratch it out until somebody's smart enough to tell me what I was thinking.
Benny?
Yes.
It does belong there, because if they feel awkward when other people are expressing their emotions, they don't know how to handle it because they don't know how to handle their own.
Okay.
So they just want it to go away.
I can live with that. Thanks for telling me what I was thinking when I wrote this a year and a half ago.
And
anybody else? To you?
Yeah, it's a projection, you know. It's sort of trying to heal myself. I'm projecting my own wound.
Okay. I could definitely go with that too. Thank you. Was there somebody else that wanted to say something? Going. Okay, good.
The same thing that they said.
Okay, cool. Thanks, John. So it stays. Inflated lover, gushing with emotion, right? See a new baby, 2 boxes of tissues gone, right? Somebody dies, 7 weeks of just intense grieving, turmoil. It's like it never ends. Addictions live in the lover quarter. Now, even though it says addictions is inflated, addictions can also point to a deflated lover. So they're either addicted to drama, addicted to their feelings, addicted to drugs, addicted to alcohol, addicted to porn, addicted to sex. Any type of addiction stuff is classically a sign grief work is needed. It's a lover wound, needs to be addressed through the gateway emotion of the lover, which is grief. They can be very loud, you know, like the heart and soul of the party, the loudest one tells the best jokes out there, completely out there. Can be very touchy-feely even when it's not welcomed. You know, like, okay, if you really need to hug me or give me a sloppy kiss for Christmas, then okay then, but it's not really what I would have preferred. Larger than life people and wanting others to express emotions in a similar way because it's their way of connecting and feeling. They want everybody to feel that. Oh, come on, lighten up, you know. And then another one that I just added this morning, rescuers. Right? They want everybody to be happy. So it's actually the same as a deflated lover. They want everybody to come on, lighten up and get with the party and feel better, and it's not so bad, and because that's the way that they connect. Rescuers. Common careers: teachers, nurses, florists, artists, people in the service industry, right? Where love is, or compassion or kindness is kind of a tool of the trade. Any comments and questions on balanced, deflated, and inflated lovers?
Recruitment consultants.
Say again?
Recruitment consultants.
Well, if your name's Leslie Hardy, then probably yes.
I used to be an inflated lover.
Okay, that's a classic line from an inflated lover. It's like,
I'm better now.
It's like, yeah, it's like, I can stop drinking anytime I want, really. I just don't want to. Those of you getting concerned, it's okay. Leslie and I have an understanding. All right, page 27. Yes.
Question.
Yes, sure.
The rescuer, does that fit under deflated or inflated?
I would
or
say
both?
inflated.
Inflated.
Yeah.
And my second question is just to rewind. You
Yes.
said something earlier about the lover that lashes out. Is that a warrior?
If I said a lover lashed out is not what I meant, then it was incorrect. So typically what would happen is when we start talking about aggression or anger, it's typically in the warrior quarter.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go to page 27 and go into lover facilitation. And we're going to leave all the theory. And we are simply going to go to the bottom paragraph of page 27. We will cover this stuff in next week's call. I want us to get some practice in. So your lover language. Your lover language. So now we are talking about the how, right? How am I going to speak to my client? Yes, I might have the tool, but how am I actually going to speak to them? Lover language: to help your client access their grief or any emotional state or meet them in it, to change the way you speak. The first thing that you do is you start speaking a lot slower, like I'm doing right now. Okay, slow down your speech. The next thing is you introduce a lot of space. In other words, space, space, space. In addition to speaking slower, space, 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 you also introduce a lot of spaces. Right? You get it? Use the word yes a lot to start sentences. I'll demonstrate that in a second. And then you use the phrase yes and when, and then you repeat what they said. And you ask them the next bit to connect all the sentences. So I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. Let's, for example, say that you are working with a client who's very upset because they just had an argument with their boss before they came to the session. And they're crying, right? Because they're so upset. Then you simply start slowing down your voice, and you use the word and a lot, just like it says in the manual, and the word yes a lot. And then you can say, if their name is John, yes, John. And when your boss yelled at you in the way that she did, what did that feel like when she yelled at you? And then he can say, well, I felt deeply ashamed. Then you say, yes. And when you felt deeply ashamed, repeating his words verbatim, this is no time to make interpretations. And when you felt ashamed, what did you really need in that moment? Well, I needed somebody to tell her that she was wrong. Yes, is the first word out of your mouth. The next word out of your mouth is and. And you repeat exactly what he just said. Yes. And when you needed someone to tell her that she was wrong, Who might you have wanted to do that? And he says the next thing. And the first word out of your mouth is yes, and the second word out of your mouth is and. And you repeat exactly what he said, and then you add the next bit to it. Does that make sense in principle? You just go yes and repeat what they said, and then you add something. And then whatever they say, you say yes and repeat what they said, and you add the next bit. Okay, good. I'm asking for a volunteer. Somebody who did not have, oh, Emmy, fabulous. I'd like you to pick, I just said I'd like you. Those of you in Fall in Love with Presenting will know why that's a no-no. Where was I? Right, pick something. I'll just unmute you. Pick something, a memory that is not particularly live. So on the SAT scale, 4 or a 5. And I want you to go to a 9, 10, 11, 12,000. It could be first day at school. Maybe something that happened a while back. You got something?
Yeah.
Okay. And what happened? Now listen, those of you observing, see if you can notice how my voice changes and my attitude change. Just instinctively, because I've done this language for a while. I'm already starting to speak slower, even in my opening statement to Emmy, which is, and what happened, Emmy?
I started at a new school halfway through the term. This was in first grade. My mum took me to the classroom, and I was introduced to the rest of the class by the teacher.
Yes.
I remember hiding behind my mum's back.
Hmm.
And I remember this little girl who, when she heard my voice, started laughing.
Okay.
When she heard my name, she started laughing.
All right. So when she heard your name, she started laughing. Just close your eyes for now. Take a nice deep breath in the nose and out the mouth. And when you remember that little girl going to this school and hiding behind her mother, and then when that girl heard her name, she started laughing. What did it feel like when that happened?
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
Felt ashamed.
Yeah. Embarrassing and ashamed. And when that little girl felt embarrassed and ashamed, what did she really need in that moment when that happened?
For an adult to have stepped up, noticed the other girl
Emmy, you still there?
smiling and laughing.
Okay. I just missed that last bit. The line disconnected there for a sec. Can you repeat that, please?
Sorry. Yeah. So she would have needed an adult to stand up for her.
Yeah.
And to actually notice that the little girl was laughing, and to do something about that.
Yeah. And when she wanted an adult to step in and help her, what actually happened instead?
Well, nobody seemed to have noticed that the other girl was laughing, and nothing happened.
Yeah. And when nobody noticed and nothing happened, what did that little girl decide when that happened?
That she wasn't important. In addition to her name being horrible.
Yeah.
Benny, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. All right, Emmy, so a nice deep breath in and out, allowing the eyes to open when you're ready. Do a bit of a body stretch if you want. Are you okay for us to continue, Emmy?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Does everybody get the idea? Just repeat what they say, yes, and repeat what they say, add the next little bit. And the next little bit is simply about being curious. My job was just to find out as much information about the scene as I could. What did she want to have happen? What happened instead? What did she decide when that happened? How did it feel when it happened? What did she really want when it happened? So that's the exercise. You're going to go into, yet again, new groups. I do suggest first day at school is easy for most of us. If that was very traumatic for you, then pick something else. But like Emmy, pick something that's fairly low on the intensity scale. We don't want you to start exploding on this call or spontaneously combust. The purpose of the call isn't therapy, it's for you to learn something. So pick a memory that's fairly low on the intensity scale. In the groups of 3, so pretty much one person will be the client, one will be the practitioner, one will be the witness. And when you witness, see if you can see how the practitioner changes the voice and see what happens to the client when they do that. And then once you're done, you'll go around. So everybody will get an opportunity to be client, witness, and practitioner in the groups of 3. In the groups of 2, you'll just do one person will do the other one, and well, not do the other one as such, but will become the practitioner and the client, and then vice versa. Any comments or questions, observations about the bit I did with Emmy? Gone. Good. So it's just about practicing, right? Practice, practice, practice. I will be popping into some of the rooms just to see what happens. I'll be on mute. I'll just pop in. You'll see my camera show up, and you just keep doing what you're doing. I'm not there to say anything, ask anything, or teach anything. I just want to see how you are doing on track. Alrighty. Invitation on your screen. So you have about 5 minutes each. I'll check into the rooms and see how you're doing, but really take your time with this one. Take your time. Welcome back. If you did not get to complete yours, so if you still feel kind of in the middle of a process, just take a nice couple of deep breaths in and out, stretch the body in any way, stamp your feet on the floor, give your face a bit of a whack around the head. All right, so I'm curious to hear from you. What did you learn from that experience?
Shall I go?
Go ahead, Jane.
I was just, I got halfway through the process of being the client, and I learned, I experienced, it felt so amazing to have it be so slow and just have what I said repeated back to me. Felt so validating. I felt he was, sorry, I can't say your name, pronounce your name, Dermot? Dermot, like that?
Yeah.
It was so soothing. It felt like he was so present and so there for me. And what I learned about myself in that process is that I tend to go too fast, and I need to slow everything down.
Isn't that amazing feedback for a process that simply entails saying the word yes and repeating what they just said? Love it. Thank you, Jane. Anybody else?
I would second Jane's comments that it felt great when I was being the client. It felt great having that. It was very warm and comforting.
Very loverish, right? Since this is a lover tool. Good. Anybody else?
For me, it was how powerful the yes and is.
In what way, Bob?
Well, as a connector and as a lead on into the next question, it just naturally, I was the witness, I witnessed, so I got to observe. How powerful that was and how validating they are just by itself, just having yes, like, okay, I've heard you, and there's an acknowledgement of what you've heard as well.
Yeah, very inclusive. Beautiful. Emmy, thank you, Bob.
Yeah, and you kind of have to also judge when you repeat everything that the client says to you, because sometimes you would do that to validate, and then sometimes it's okay to validate just by saying yes, and then the question you ask next will demonstrate that you have understood and you have heard, and the client will know that the next question will already show to them that, yeah, I'm being validated. This person gets me.
Do you have an example of that, Emmy?
So for example, I was the client. Avanol was working on me here. And in the beginning, she would repeat every single word that I said, and it felt good. But then when that was repeated with every single thing that I said over and over again, it started to feel a little bit too much. So it wasn't necessarily validating anymore. It was, for me, in that point, it felt enough to be validated by the yes and the next question that showed to me that she had heard me.
Okay, cool. Great feedback also. Thank you, Emmy. Anybody else? What happened?
It was interesting to me that if it's our natural, like my natural place to be, this archetype, it's easy. And for some people who it may not be their natural place, it's a little harder. So it's just a case of practicing. I know I might find some of the others a little bit more challenging. And so it's easy it's interesting just how easily we can step into or not with a bit of more practice.
It's a great point because we are focusing on the client's archetype, but make no mistake, we also have our preferred ways of red dress and green shirts. So if you by default, if lover archetype, as Liesl said, isn't your comfortable space, this technique is probably going to feel very artificial to you. It's just going to feel weird and awkward, and why the hell would you want to do that? And you keep expecting the client to go, what the hell are you repeating my words for? When in fact, if you just follow the process, even if it is uncomfortable, it works 9 times out of 10. Anybody else? It's time for one more comment, question, observation.
Where I was with Leslie, we talked about almost going a 360. So the question came back, you've come in as you've got an issue, and then you keep asking and asking and acknowledging, and then you turn the 360 as to more of the balanced lover maybe, or more empowered. But curiosity question for me was, and maybe I'm the magician here now, at what point do you branch off and do the what work? What are we going to do?
Yes, so we will cover more of that next time. The purpose of this particular exercise is for you to get the experience with a lover type language, which remember we will use when we judge that this is the work the client needs to do. Now, remember also I asked you for the exercise to pick a memory that's fairly low in intensity. But if it was high in intensity, very likely the tears would have started flowing at some point anyway. And that's what we want to enable, right? We don't want to make our clients cry. We want to enable the choice of crying, or the opportunity of crying in the session to actually start resolving the grief. So if it was an actual live process, you probably would have seen an emotion anyway. And then once we've gone through the whole list of tools, there's like about 20 different or 15 different things you can do. You just pick the next one. We'll pick the one that seems right in the moment. But this was, thank you, yeah. So we were very much just focused on part 1 of the exercise. Elizabeth, do you want to go ahead, Carol?
We actually access the emotion.
The client.
Ours went, even though, we thought that we were doing something that wasn't very deep, it went there.
So there we go. So even though
the emotion.
Exactly. So even though the intention was to keep it up there, it went to where it had to go anyway. Elizabeth, same with you?
Yeah, we were in the same group, and it was really interesting for me to see how deep we got so quickly.
Yeah. And it's so simple, right? We slow down, yes, and repeat the words, come up with the next stem. Also, the good thing about saying yes and then repeating, it gives your brain another 2 seconds to think what actually comes next, right? It gives you time. A couple of closing comments and we will wrap up for today. I did not say that up front. When we do lover work and we want them to go within and potentially touch the grief, it's easier for most people to do it with their eyes closed. So I do suggest you get the client to close their eyes fairly on. Some people, it won't work, but they are, in my experience, in the minority, people who don't feel safe to close their eyes, and they can do it eyes open. But typically eyes closed would make it easier for them to access the emotion because there's less distraction. And then the last one is, for the purpose of this, please, until you master this, please follow the recipe as in the manual. Yes, and when you said what you said, add your own sentence stem. Yes, and when you said what you said, add your own stem. Stick with the words for now until you practice it. And then when somebody talks a lot, so it's, oh yeah, so my first day at school, and I was wearing that blue dress, and the sun was out, and there were lots of flowers, and my mom walked with the dog and the cat, and the neighbor's auntie, and da-da-da-da. You know, this, we could be here the whole day. It is your job to interrupt them gently with your lover energy. You go, close your eyes. When it was your first day at school, and you arrived at school, what happened? Right? So you close the eyes, which will stop the whole story. You redirect, you refocus kindly, yet firmly. Because talking about the whole thing the whole day is very likely not going to bring any change. We want to go to where the incident actually happened, or the hurt happened, or the humiliation, or the shame, or whatever it was. All right, it's time for us to wrap up for today. So thank you for playing full out. Stretch the body if you want. Do a cheesy grin and point to somebody else and go, see ya. See ya, see ya, see ya. All right, so as we did last time, I'll unmute you all. And on the count of 3, we will all check out at the same time. Some of you have muted yourselves, so you're going to need to unmute yourselves. On the count of 1, 2, and 3, what are you leaving with? 1, 2, 3.
Love and information.
Thank
you.
Bye. Oh, yes. I forgot to ask, so I'll ask now briefly. Please let me know, yes or no, if you would like the transcripts of each session. We need a few more people to make that financially viable. So the transcript will be all these notes typed out, so it's much easier to refer to, make notes, file it, do whatever. If you do want the transcripts, in fact, yeah, why don't you just raise your hand now, then I can get the names, you don't have to do anything else. So that's Barb and Fiona and Robin and Leslie and Elizabeth and Dermot. Okay, this is a goer. And Jane. Cara, is your hand up or not?
Yeah, my hand is up, and I also was wanted to ask another question. I know you sent a replay link, and I watched the replay. Is there any way to download the video, the replay, so that you can replay it again and again and again? Because I didn't know.
If there is a desire, I can make it happen. Does anybody else would like? I know you can download the audios. Does anybody else want to download the video? Okay, I'll look into that.
It was recording. You just
yeah, the audio recording is for download. What Cara wants to do is download the video. So I'll have a look.
If it's easy or something,
I'll have a look at it. I'll let you know. Please use the Facebook group. Let's have a chat. Lots of love to you. Big hugs. And until next. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.